The Gorn commander's smug reptilian face was wiped clean by shock as Earth's secret supercarrier emerged from stealth systems to dominate the battlefield. Commander Linux's eyes gleamed with predatory malice as he stared at the seemingly outmatched human frigate on his viewscreen. His Gorn battlecruiser, a fearsome warship bristling with advanced weaponry, dwarfed the Earth vessel. Linux's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air. He was ready for an easy kill. "Surrender immediately, humans," Linux hissed, his voice dripping with contempt. "Or be annihilated. Your pathetic ship is no match for Gorn might. After we destroy you, we will conquer your Earth and enslave your species." On the frigate's bridge, Captain Donald Jackson, a grizzled veteran with a scar slashing down his cheek, stared back at the Gorn commander, unblinking. Jackson had seen his share of battles against the ruthless Gorn Empire. He knew what was at stake, the fate of Earth and all of humanity. If the Gorn weren't stopped here, they would ravage Earth, slaughtering millions and condemning the survivors to a life of servitude. Jackson's jaw tightened. He leaned forward, his eyes hard as flint. "We will never surrender to you, Linux. Earth will fight to the last man to preserve our freedom. You picked the wrong species to fuck with." Linux recoiled, his eyes flashing with rage at the human's defiance. "Then die, Earthling scum." The Gorn commander slammed his fist on the console, signaling his weapons officer. The battlecruiser's plasma cannons glowed, locking onto Jackson's frigate. Linux's maw curled into a vicious grin, revealing rows of jagged teeth. He would enjoy watching the humans burn. But as the Gorn cannons fired, their superheated plasma lashing out at the Earth frigate, the impossible happened. The human ship shimmered and vanished, a hologram. Linux's triumphant snarl contorted into a look of sheer disbelief as a gargantuan shape emerged from the darkness behind the dissipating illusion. It was a colossal Earth supercarrier, easily dwarfing the Gorn battlecruiser. The human warship was a sleek titan of reinforced alloy and crackling energy shields. Broadside plasma cannons and missile batteries bristled along its armored hull, tracking the Gorn vessel. It was a masterstroke of deception. The humans had lured Linux in, and now had him outgunned and outmatched. On the battlecruiser's viewscreen, Jackson's scarred face reappeared, a cold smile playing across his weathered features. "Surprise, you Gorn son of a bitch. You fell right into our trap. Looks like the hunter just became prey." The supercarrier's weapons locks flashed red as they centered on critical points of the Gorn ship. Linux pounded the console, his claws gouging the metal. He snarled orders at his crew to raise shields and charge weapons, but he knew it was futile. The humans had played him for a fool. Now, with the might of the supercarrier looming over him, Linux realized that the centuries-old balance of power in the galaxy had just titled in a new direction. The Gorn's belief in their own superiority and invincibility had been shattered in a single instant. For the first time in his warmongering life, a flicker of an alien emotion skittered down Linux's spine as he stared down the human supercarrier's guns. Fear. The battle was about to be joined, and the fate of Earth and the Gorn Empire hung in the balance. But one thing was certain: the Gorn had gravely underestimated humanity, and they were about to pay the price for their arrogance. The gargantuan human supercarrier loomed over the Gorn ship, a titan of human ingenuity and military might. On the viewscreen, Linux snarled with barely contained rage as he assessed the situation. His battlecruiser was formidable, but against a ship of this size and power, he knew he was outmatched. With a hiss of frustration, he slammed his fist on the console. "Helm, initiate retreat protocols. Get us out of here," Linux growled. The Gorn crew scrambled to comply, but before the battlecruiser could jump to warp, the supercarrier's advanced tractor beams locked onto the ship, halting its escape. The bridge shuddered as the beams took hold, the metal groaning under the strain. Jackson's face appeared on the viewscreen, his expression hard and unyielding. "Gorn vessel, this is Captain Donald Jackson of the Earth Supercarrier Titan. Surrender immediately or we will open fire." Linux's eyes narrowed, his claws digging into his palm. He was trapped, and he knew it. With a snarl of humiliation, he ground out his response. Surrender, human. Jackson nodded curtly. Prepare to be boarded. Minutes later, Jackson materialized on the Gorn Bridge with a heavily armed security detail. They swiftly secured the area, training their weapons on Linux and his officers. The Gorn commander glared at Jackson, barely restraining his rage as the human captain placed him under arrest. As the security team escorted the Gorn to the brig, Jackson and his officers accessed the battlecruiser's database. They sifted through the data, searching for any information that could give them an advantage against the Gorn Empire. Suddenly, Jackson's eyes widened as he uncovered a disturbing secret. The Gorn had been developing a new weapon of mass destruction, one capable of annihilating entire planets. The Supercarrier's advanced AI rapidly analyzed the schematics, tracing the weapon's construction to a hidden research facility deep in Gorn territory. In the brig, Jackson stood before a seething Linux, his eyes hard as flint. Where is the research facility? Tell me, and I may show mercy. Linux sneered, baring his fangs. I will tell you nothing, human. The Gorn Empire will crush you and your pathetic species. Jackson's jaw tightened. He knew he was racing against time. If the Gorn completed their weapon, billions of lives would be at risk. He turned to his second-in-command. Set a course for Gorn space. We're going to find that facility and destroy it, no matter the cost. As the Supercarrier veered towards enemy territory, Jackson couldn't shake the feeling of unease that crept up his spine. The Gorn were cunning and ruthless, and he suspected they had more surprises in store. But no matter the challenges ahead, Jackson vowed to protect Earth and the galaxy from the Gorn's deadly ambitions. Failure was not an option. The Supercarrier glided through the inky void of Gorn space, its sensors probing the darkness for any signs of danger. The crew stood on high alert, knowing that they were in enemy territory and that the Gorn could strike at any moment. Captain Jackson paced the bridge, his eyes scanning the view screens. Suddenly, the proximity alarms blared as a fleet of cloaked Gorn ships shimmered into view, their weapons already firing. The Supercarrier shuddered as the enemy's plasma cannons slammed into its shields, the energy barrier flaring and crackling under the onslaught. Jackson gripped the armrest of his command chair as the deck shook beneath his feet. Divert power to the shields, he barked. Maintain defensive posture. The crew rushed to obey, rerouting energy from the weapon systems to bolster the ship's defenses. The constant barrage of enemy fire battered the Supercarrier, but its advanced shields held firm. Jackson's mind raced as he analyzed the situation. The Gorn had anticipated their move and laid a trap. They were outnumbered and outgunned. But he had a plan. Launch the drones, he ordered. Let's even the odds. From the Supercarrier's hangar bays, a swarm of sleek, deadly fighter drones streaked out into space. Each drone was piloted remotely by a skilled human operator, their neural links allowing them to control the craft as if they were inside the cockpit. The drones engaged the Gorn ships, darting and weaving through the enemy fire with unnatural speed and agility. As the space battle raged outside, Jackson turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Alex Novak. Take a team of Marines and infiltrate one of those Gorn ships. Plant charges on their weapons and engines. Create a diversion so we can get the hell out of here. Novak nodded grimly. Yes, sir, we'll get it done. Minutes later, Novak and his hand-picked team of elite Marines boarded a cloaked shuttle and slipped away from the Supercarrier, undetected by the Gorn. They docked with one of the enemy ships, cutting through the hull with plasma torches. As they made their way through the alien vessel, the Marines encountered fierce resistance from the Gorn crew. Plasma bolts crisscrossed the narrow corridors as the humans and Gorn fought a deadly close-quarters battle. Novak and his men pushed forward, planting explosive charges at key locations. But as they neared the shuttle, their path was blocked by a heavily armed group of Gorn soldiers. The Marines took cover, returning fire with their pulse rifles. The air was thick with the stench of ozone and burning flesh. Novak saw two of his men go down, their armor pierced by plasma bolts. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Novak gritted his teeth, preparing to make a final stand. But just as all seemed lost, the charges detonated, ripping through the Gorn ship's hull. Explosions tore through the vessel, the deck buckling and twisting. In the chaos, Novak and his surviving team members fought their way back to the shuttle, dragging their wounded comrades with them. They blasted away from the crippled Gorn ship, narrowly avoiding the debris field as the vessel broke apart. The shuttle docked with the Supercarrier, and Jackson watched grimly as the battered Marines stumbled onto the hangar deck. Novak met his captain's gaze, his face smeared with blood and grime. They had succeeded in their mission, but at a cost. As the Supercarrier jumped to safety, the FTL drive tearing a hole in the fabric of space, Jackson slumped in his chair, exhausted and drained. They had escaped the Gorn trap, but he knew this was only the beginning. The enemy would be hunting them now, determined to stop them from reaching the research facility, and Jackson still had no idea what other surprises the Gorn had in store for them. The battle was far from over, and the price of victory would be high. Jackson just hoped that he and his crew were ready to pay it. With the Gorn fleet in disarray, the Earth Supercarrier surged forward through the void, its engines thrumming with power. On the bridge, Captain Jackson stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen. The crew worked with tense efficiency, their fingers flying over consoles, as they scanned for any sign of the hidden Gorn research facility. In the brig, Commander Linux paced his cell, his reptilian features twisted into a sneer. As Jackson entered, Linux looked up, his eyes glinting with malice. "Zhao may have won this battle, human," Linux hissed, "but you will never find the research facility, and even if you do, you will never leave it alive." Jackson's jaw tightened. "We'll see about that." Linux's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air. "You have no idea what you're up against, Captain. The Gorn Empire has eyes and ears everywhere, even on your own ship." Jackson froze, his blood running cold. "What are you talking about?" Linux chuckled, a rasping sound that set Jackson's teeth on edge. "You have a spy in your midst, human. One of your own, working for us. You'll never see the betrayal coming." Jackson slammed his fist against the cell's force field, sending sparks flying. He stormed out of the brig, his mind reeling. A spy among his crew? It couldn't be. He had handpicked each and every one of them, trusting them with his life and the fate of Earth. But as the days passed, and the Supercarrier drew closer to its target, Jackson found himself growing more and more paranoid. He second-guessed every decision, questioned every order. He pulled away from his officers, isolating himself in his quarters, poring over data and intel, searching for any hint of treachery. On the bridge, the crew exchanged uneasy glances as their captain grew more and more erratic. Whispers began to circulate, rumors of Jackson's instability, his obsession with rooting out the supposed spy. Suddenly, the ship's AI blared an alert. "Captain, I've detected an anomalous energy signature emanating from a nearby planet. It matches the profile of the Gorn research facility." Jackson snapped to attention, his eyes wide. "Set a course, maximum velocity. This could be it." As the Supercarrier approached the planet, a seemingly barren world of rock and dust, Jackson ordered the ship to assume a geosynchronous orbit. Scans revealed no signs of life or technology on the surface. But just as the crew began to question their captain's judgment, a massive energy surge erupted from beneath the planet's crust. The Supercarrier shuddered as an immense tractor beam locked onto its hull, dragging it down towards the surface with inexorable force. Alarms blared as the ship plunged through the planet's atmosphere, its shields straining against the intense heat and pressure. The beam pulled them towards a gaping maw that had opened up in the planet's surface, a cavernous hangar that swallowed the Supercarrier whole. As the ship settled onto the hangar's deck, with a bone-jarring thud, Jackson and his crew stared out the viewports in horror. They were surrounded on all sides by Gorn warships, a vast armada bristling with weapons and soldiers. It was a trap, one that had been laid for them from the very beginning. Gorn soldiers boarded the Supercarrier, storming the corridors with ruthless efficiency. Jackson and his crew fought back with everything they had, but they were hopelessly outnumbered and outgunned. One by one, the human defenders fell until only a handful remained. barricaded on the bridge, marking their last stand. As the Gorn closed in, the doors to the bridge suddenly hissed open. Jackson spun around, his pulse rifle leveled, ready to face the enemy head-on. But instead of Gorn soldiers, he found himself staring at a familiar face. Lieutenant Novak stood before him, a cruel smile playing across his lips. In his hand he held a Gorn plasma pistol, its barrel pointed directly at Jackson's chest. "Novak?" Jackson whispered, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "What the hell are you doing?" "What does it look like, Captain?" Novak sneered. "I'm taking what's rightfully mine. The Gorn have promised me power and wealth beyond my wildest dreams. All I had to do was give them the Supercarrier and its crew." Jackson's grip tightened on his rifle, his finger hovering over the trigger. But before he could fire, the Gorn soldiers surged onto the bridge, their weapons trained on the remaining humans. Jackson had no choice but to drop his gun, his hands raised in surrender. As the Gorn dragged him and his crew away, Jackson caught one last glimpse of Novak's smirking face. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound, a searing pain that threatened to consume him whole. But even as despair washed over him, Jackson clung to one last shred of hope. The Gorn had made a mistake, he realized. They had underestimated humanity's resolve, their will to fight back against impossible odds. And as long as he still drew breath, Jackson vowed to make them pay for that mistake. But as the Gorn led him and his crew deeper into the bowels of the installation, Jackson couldn't help but wonder what other horrors awaited them. The Gorn had proven themselves to be a cunning and ruthless enemy, one that would stop at nothing to achieve their goals. And with Novak's betrayal, they now held all the cards. The fate of Earth and perhaps the entire galaxy hung in the balance, and as Jackson was dragged further into the darkness, he could only pray that somehow, against all odds, humanity would find a way to survive the coming storm. Jackson slumped against the cold metal wall of the Gorn prison cell, his body battered and bruised from the endless interrogations. Around him, the few remaining members of his crew lay in various states of injury and despair, their spirits broken by the relentless torture. The cell door hissed open, and Linux strode in, flanked by a pair of heavily armed Gorn guards. The reptilian commander's eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction as he surveyed the defeated humans. "You thought you could outsmart the Gorn Empire," Linux hissed, his forked tongue flicking out. "But we've been manipulating your pathetic species from the beginning. Novak and our other spies have been feeding us information for years, allowing us to stay one step ahead of you at every turn." Jackson glared at Linux, his jaw clenched tight. "You won't win. Earth will never surrender to you." Linux chuckled, a rasping sound that sent shivers down Jackson's spine. "Oh, but we already have. With the information we've extracted from your crew, our invasion fleet is ready to strike. Earth will fall, and your people will become our slaves." A massive figure ducked through the cell door, dwarfing even the Gorn soldiers. It was the Gorn Emperor himself, an ancient and terrifying creature with scales the color of molten lava and eyes that glowed with malevolent intelligence. The Emperor fixed his gaze on Jackson, his voice a rumbling growl. "This human is the leader, the one who has caused us so much trouble. Break him, and the rest will follow." At a signal from the Emperor, the Gorn guards seized Jackson and dragged him from the cell. Over the next several hours, they subjected him to unimaginable tortures, using advanced Gorn technology to probe his mind and body for any scrap of useful information. Jackson screamed until his throat was raw, but he refused to break. Even as he watched his crew members succumb to the torture one by one, their minds shattered and their bodies broken, he clung to his resolve, determined to resist to the last. Finally, in a moment of desperation, Jackson managed to break free from his restraints. Moving with a speed and strength born of pure adrenaline, he overpowered his guards and seized their weapons. Alarms blared as Jackson fought his way through the Gorn facility, his heart pounding in his chest. He had to find a way to warn Earth, to let them know about the impending invasion. After a desperate battle, Jackson finally reached the installation's communication center. His hands shaking with exhaustion, he sent a frantic message to Earth detailing the Gorn's plans and the location of the research facility. Just as he hit send, Linux and a squad of Gorn soldiers burst into the room, their weapons trained on Jackson. The human captain knew he was out of time. In a final act of defiance, Jackson slammed his fist down on the console, activating the facility's self-destruct sequence. He knew he was sacrificing himself and his remaining crew, but if it meant buying Earth even a little more time, it would be worth it. As the installation exploded in a blinding flash of light, the Earth Supercarrier received Jackson's message. The bridge crew, now under the command of a new captain, listened in stunned silence as Jackson's voice crackled over the speakers, his final words a rallying cry for all of humanity. The crew mourned the loss of their brave comrades, but they knew that Jackson's sacrifice had not been in vain. The Gorn Empire's secret weapon had been destroyed, and Earth had been given a fighting chance. But even as they steeled themselves for the long and brutal war ahead, they knew that the Gorn would not rest until humanity had been crushed beneath their scaly heels. The stage was set for a final devastating confrontation, with the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.